Well, good morning, everyone. Everyone hear me at the back here? Yep, okay, great. Well, I'm very pleased to be able to kick off the first roundtable of this conference, and I'm delighted that this conference has been structured because I think there was a gap in the market waiting for the ground systems, which is an incredibly exciting topic at the moment, given how much change is going on. So how I'm going to do this panel is I'm going to introduce myself, which I always forget to do, and people left thinking, who the hell is that woman up there? I'm then going to ask my panel to introduce themselves. I have a bunch of questions here, which we're going to go through, but I want this to be a very interactive session. There will definitely be time for questions at the end. I'll leave 5 minutes or maybe even 10. However, if you have a burning question that relates to what is being discussed, stick your hand up. We're not a huge audience here. We can handle that. And I want you to feel that you're involved. And this is a whole interactive discussion about this really interesting topic. So, me, for those of you that don't know me, and a lot of you do, because it's great to see some familiar faces in the audience here. I'm Elizabeth Tweedy. I started my career in satellite communications with Hughes many years ago, where I did international business development and corporate strategy. When Hughes was broken up and became independently DirecTV, PanAmSat became part of Intelsat, the manufacturing arm became Boeing Satellite Systems, and Hughes Network Systems was spun off. I went out on my own and formed Definitive Direction. And for the first probably 15 years, most of my focus was on doing research, market analysis, and writing business plans for customers in the industry. I also started to write for one of the other satellite magazines, other than the one that's sponsoring this conference. And I found that I really enjoyed writing. And more, I was doing more writing and less market analysis and business plans. And now that is almost entirely what I do. I still write for the magazine. I do articles and market briefs and tech briefs for them. But primarily, I do ghostwriting for companies in the industry. White papers, press releases, magazine articles, blogs, web copy, whatever they need. And I work for clients such as SES, Integrasys, and River Advisors, who are on my panel here. I also know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. The PR itself is not my expertise at all. So I work very closely with Proactive PR. The CEO, Jane, is sitting down there, and they have a booth outside. So combined, we work really well. If they have satellite clients they need help with, I work with them, and they do the PR side of things. So that's me. So I'm going to pass it to my panel. Mark, would you like to start off?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Mark Klager out in Frio. He's the account manager at business development for the European Ancient Curl and Satcom Bond and the data at a bank on the raw station. That's my the really obvious that Satcom is easy there was so he started on this journey about 12 years ago. The tires and about 8 years ago was like we gave all of them the minutes to be making software with the emos. He put in his ways of spot by the Satcom. Working about and all working that document about how it is, cited to how to transition to the digital infrastructure to create dynamic and enabling enough we can operate Satcom networks operation. That's everything from just the traditional baseband Satcom equipment all the way dynamic frequency allocations and the interaction with changing the beams on software-defined satellites. One other area that we participate in that we're very well known for is our SBA and our RF analysis. We do a lot of systems for regulators around the world, both for monitoring their RF environments, for other types of intercepted monitoring of dynamics. That's praise.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Dunn, CEO of ETL Systems. I've been with ETL for coming up a couple of years now, but ETL has been providing pretty much every element in the RF chain for RF distribution for the entire SATCOM ground segment. Similarly to Mark, actually, in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, we've been very focused on looking at how we support the transition from traditional RF into the digital domain. So a lot of our development efforts have been on sort of innovating in that RF to digital environment. As far as where we are today, we're actually got a stand in the other room, so please feel free to stop by, and myself or my colleague Andrew Bond will be happy to sort of give you a bit more detail on where we are in terms of our development and where we're taking the technology.
Good morning, everyone. This video this morning on is Alexis Morning, reaching TripAdvisor, previously known as Mansat. We've been in this for the past 25 years, and that is really validated to make it to whether for the equity infrastructure or at the navigation regulatory framework with confidence, and we help them secure market rights they need to operate their system. So simply put, we're here to help.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael DePaolo. I'm Director of Project Management and also Business Development at SpaceBridge. SpaceBridge is a producer and a developer of ground equipment, specifically DVB-RCS2, for both hubs and user terminals equipment. Currently, we're in the middle of our new product release, which is a new ultra-scalable RCS2 hub topology, which services HTS and VHTS geo topologies. Also, the platform that we've developed is actually RCS2 ready. There's a continuing evolution within the RCS2 community to scale toward LEO and MEO topologies, and our platform that we've developed is actually capable of scaling to those markets as well. So essentially, that's what SpaceBridge is all about today. It's about delivering RCS2 networks to the users.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So, as has been said in the previous panel, we're in a time of change or disruption. And frankly, I can't remember how many times I've actually written that in my career in satellite. Like, okay, now something new's comes along. Now it's changing. Well, guess what? I think that's why most of us are here, because we love it, because it always is changing. But never has it been more true than it is now. We've got AI, we've got virtualization, we've got 5G, everything's going on. So my first question to the panel is, what impact is this having on product development, on your relationships with customers? Have you had to change your business models? And we will delve into more detail with some of those individual topics like AI and virtualization. But this is the more general one. I'm sorry about this. I'll get this mic in a minute. This is the more general one as to how it's impacting your business models and your customer relations. Whoever would like to. I can only talk if I look away from my panel. This is crazy.
I'll start off. One of the things, with the and one of the big things I noticed is different is when you start virtualizing anything in SATCOM, you're going through a digital transformation. So two big changes I saw. One is I no longer just talk to the SATCOM department. I talk to the IT department, the security department, the business department. It really expanded who gets involved in developing the SATCOM products. That was the first thing I noticed. And the second thing I noticed was that if the whole company's not bought into a digital transformation, it makes it really hard for the SATCOM department to push it.
I think I'd add to that, actually, Mark, in terms of, we've traditionally at ETL been very focused on RF, which naturally has been the case. And again, in terms of departmentally within customers, there's a new evolution within those customer organizations where much more is focused on network architectures, how the entire system architecture is going to be operated beyond where the traditional sort of SATCOM RF teams were focused on a very discrete element of that SATCOM chain. And I think as a business, we've sort of very much focused on how do we adapt? I mean, it's very much you evolve or die in the environment. Yes, it's still in an evolving position, but it's very much a focus on how do we look slightly differently at the business from more of a product business into our customers, into more of a solution provider and a service provider in that environment. And that's more in the software as a service. There's a lot more work in terms of partnering with other industry partners. It's not that straightforward to just do it on your own, because the scale at which the entire environment is changing currently means that you've got to be on the front foot, and there's more entrants, particularly in the software as a service environment, that are sort of driving that change at a more rapid pace than we've ever seen in the past from a SATCOM market perspective, particularly in that ground segment space.
So if it's more effort, does that mean it's hitting your bottom line?
No, what it means is that in terms of development focus and where our business development and technical teams are spending their efforts, it's a shift of focus rather than necessarily a direct impact on the financials. And we can't sort of lose sight of the fact that there is still a huge infrastructure there and will continue to be a huge infrastructure there in the traditional space. It's just about managing that transition across.
Okay. Do you want to say anything, Alex?
Yeah, I think, we kind of witness the same from where we sit in the whole value chain. We see clients coming to us with the incredibly innovative technologies and ideas. Direct to device, Bluetooth from space, real-time Earth observation, this type of thing. And we've seen that there's no one-size-fits-all regulatory strategy. They need much more than this, I would say, the legacy regulatory approach that applied to most of the systems a few years ago. And I think this is where a bespoke, personalized approach truly shines in supporting those clients through the regulatory journey.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I think one of the things that I've seen most is that there's a lot of customer confusion. There's so much stuff happening in our space now with the NTN efforts and the digital virtualization and all these other aspects that customers are basically throwing out a pile of requirements which are very difficult to meet for any one vendor. And so it's creating a lot of confusion out there. And oftentimes we spend a lot of our time re-educating customers to get them down to the basic requirement. What do they actually want to deliver? And it's sometimes it gets back to the basics. Okay, getting back to the basics of what do you want to sell? What does the customer want? Are they looking for specifically IP broadband? And then they get confused again, and they say, "Oh, but at the same time, I want direct to device while having IP broadband." So it's like, that I find has been one of the challenges for our company in navigating this evolution in the satellite industry.
Okay. So you're all busy navigating change and reconstructing as you go and making new partnerships. So there's always an elephant in the room, and we're going to bring it right out in front. Starlink. We can't ignore it. It has completely changed the industry by the way it's just ploughed in and done things that not that many years ago, people were saying, no, they'll never be successful. Okay, they'll have the consumer market, but they'll never get the business market. Well, that's not the case anymore. We know that. So one of the big differences with Starlink, with most of the other systems around, is they do everything in-house. They're not plowing out the different sections of the ground segment and the space segment. So what kind of impact is that having on you, the other ground manufacturers, in terms of, are you learning anything from this? Do you think you need to change? And how has it changed your relationships with suppliers? And what are you directing new partnerships? How are you handling all this? Who would like to take it first?
If I may. I personally think that what Starlink brought to the industry was really undeniably that the vertically integrated solution is very promising. And of course, that prior to Starlink, Hughes and Viasat had done exactly the same thing. They had vertically integrated solutions, and you saw that the value propositions were strong there. What as an independent companies, each of us are essentially independent companies. Trying to put together that vertically integrated solution is a very, very difficult thing. And I think that what the industry is lacking really is more close coordination of the different groups in order to develop that tightly knit solution. It would be beneficial if the satellite manufacturers and the satellite operators and the ground equipment guys were more aligned up to deliver a cohesive system. Which would make it so that our industry in general would be much more competitive. I think that that's really where we have to go. Okay, and it's I think I mentioned it to you earlier today. Kuiper with they're bringing on I think it was 2,000 to 4,000 engineers, ASIC, FPGA, hardware, software. They're not having these debates about digital transformation. They're going out and delivering a single cohesive system. Okay. While we're debating different issues, such as what we consider big details, but they're actually small details in the greater scheme of things. So,
anyone else want to comment on whether we're all on the wrong track and talking about the wrong thing here?
I agree with Michelle that the industry needs to get together and work more closely together to create end-to-end solutions. And there's some standards bodies going on to start to work on that. DIFI is one of them that will help. 5G will most likely be a big impetus in that as well. But what Starlink really proved was that the user experience is what everyone was dying for. And when I say user experience, I mean the ability to go onto a web portal, order a SATCOM service, have it shipped to you without talking to an RF engineer about how big my antenna needs to be, without spending a week working on frequency allocations. All that's integrated, and it's easy for the customer. The customer just calls up, boom, out it goes. That's what needs to happen in the rest of the SATCOM industry. And there's no technology that's preventing that from happening. That happens with OneWeb, and OneWeb is not a vertically integrated system, right? They went out to the market, and they have both different vendors. Kratos is a vendor in there, Hughes is a vendor in there. And all those systems work together to create a very similar system from a user experience standpoint that Starlink is. But you can argue with which one's better or not. That's not what we're here for. It's just it's that ability to quickly deploy. Now, there's a lot of challenges in GEO to get there, but if we don't overcome those, then it's going to be, we're going to have more and more challenges competing with Starlink. And we need to do it now and not wait for 5G. 5G could be great. It could solve a lot of the problems. But if we don't do it now, 5G is too far away. I mean, we're talking 2 or 3 years for 5G. We need to start deploying these systems next year.
You're talking about 5G via satellite when you say
5G via satellite. Yeah, 5G, new radio.
Yeah.
NTN.
Okay. Any other comments on the?
Yeah, with the previous speakers, definitely we agree that Starlink have amazing strike force. They've got everything internally, what they want to do, they make it happen. And we've seen they've made actually regulators embrace changes. And that's a big thing from a side of the business, because back a few years ago, you need a license, you go on the website, it's pretty much GMPCS, the old in-master style license, or VSAT, download the form, fill out the blanks, and submit. You want to do some broadband, there was no phone for broadband, there was no way to get a license to actually operate some broadband constellation. So they made things change. And nowadays, the regulators no longer deal with the so-called regulatory blind spots that would create barriers for innovation. Now we see them ready to discuss, to engage. It's more a two-way communication now in the discussion between the operators and the regulators. They're ready to consider changes in the market, changing in the services, in the orbits, and we see more, I would say, innovation supported by the regulators. And we've moved from an overly prescriptive regulatory framework to more open and flexible framework. I think that's really positive for the whole industry. Not only Starlink, stop polarizing Starlink and the rest of the world industry, the whole industry, Starlink, Kuiper, and any startup out there trying to introduce a new technology in the market.
Kevin, do you want to add anything? No? Okay. No one from the audience? I've never known Starlink not gender audience participation before. Okay. So let's move on to 5G, which you just stated is several years away. But it's not several years away terrestrially. And somehow we have to work with that if we're going to be part of the overall infrastructure. So what are the biggest technical and operational challenges that you have in integrating with 5G? I mean, it's great that for the first time, satellite was included in these discussions, so we now have 5G NTN, non-terrestrial networks. But nevertheless, it's not as simple as just sitting down at the table and saying, yeah, this is part of it. There's a lot of work has to go into making this truly work. So how are you handling that, and what are the big challenges?
In my opinion, it's going to change a lot. If you look at the traditional baseband providers, one of the big things that they provide is bandwidth management, QoS. That's kind of the core of their systems. With 5G NTN, that goes away, right? All of that is now handled at the 5G core. And SATCOM becomes more of a transport mechanism and a radio network access system. And to me, that is going to be revolutionary in the SATCOM industry. That's going to drive the biggest change from a business perspective as well as from a technology perspective. And I'm not sure we got it figured out yet of what that change is going to be, but I think it could turn the whole industry on its ear.
And I think to sort of go back to your point that you made in the last discussion, we're in a position where we're trying to understand how, as an industry, that actually works. And we're talking about collaboration at a level that we haven't quite got it there in the traditional SATCOM environment. So when you extend that out to the much broader standard telecommunications environment, which is huge by comparison. And so from a standardization perspective, you mentioned Diffie in terms of the SATCOM digital sort of standards that are being introduced. And that's still a little way off in terms of having that at a mature level, so that we can all interoperate at a standard level. When we start talking about integrating standards like eCPRI into the mix with that standardization approach, there's still a way to go in terms of getting the entire industry aligned in terms of what that's going to look like and who has which part to play in that, because that's not really clear at this point in time, who's going to take on which elements of the integration activities. So I agree. I think it's a way off for a completely seamless, dynamic kind of bandwidth allocation across both SATCOM and 5G. But that's the challenge at the moment, is how do we navigate that as an industry?
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that's most interesting to me is, for years we've heard about people selling off their gateways, and I kept thinking, nobody's going to do that. That's their business, right? Well, now we've seen it, right? EQT's buying Eutelsat's gateway infrastructure. And you got to question, what does EQT see in the future that we don't see? What is it that they're seeing that makes them willing to spend that amount of money to buy dishes, ground, and RF equipment?
Do you have any ideas?
I have an idea.
Okay, do you have any ideas that you'd like to share?
It goes back to my original comment, is that the industry in 5 years probably won't look like the way the industry looks today. Because you're going to have this disaggregation of what's happened in the past, and it's going to bring in new players. If you look at 5G NTN, who wrote it? Who wrote all the 5G NTN new radio stuff? The telcos.
Yeah.
It wasn't written by us. So now you think about that, right? EQT buying Eutelsat's gateways, the telcos writing SATCOM standards. I don't know all the answers. I've got guesses and speculations, but I think it's going to be a big, big change to the whole market, not just technology.
Yeah. Anyone else care to jump in on that one?
I have a few comments there, if I may.
I thought you might.
The NTN stuff it's as you mentioned, it's a telco-driven initiative, and it's very interesting. And it's I was reading up some recent statistics. I think one of the NSR reports they mentioned that so far 10 countries have signed on, okay, to these type of services. Some 35 countries are evaluating, testing, validating the technology for their use. But that's a heck of a lot. Rest of the world hasn't signed on, okay. And the business case is, everybody questioned the business case of Starlink. So let's not even go there. The business cases are business cases, and billionaires are billionaires, and they'll throw money at things until, like, you know. But at the end of the day, it's somebody has to pay for these services, okay. And it's maybe a here today, gone tomorrow type service, I can't really comment with regards to that, but there's other ways of addressing this, okay? There's other ways of addressing this. One of the things that at SpaceBridge we've been looking at, and actually what we're implementing, is that 5G has a standard called non-3G interworking functions, okay? It's a way of taking different technologies and migrating into the 5G core. Where if you think about the 5G core, that's what you actually want. You want the 5G core. You want a centralized location for 5G service, whether it's your mobile cell phone, your Wi-Fi router, your DSL, your DOCSIS. Everything should go into this 5G core. And we believe that there could be a SATCOM 3GPP interworking function where legacy satellite devices, such as, I call them legacy, but only because they're based on the transport being DBBRCS2. But we could easily convert our data plane to interoperate with a 5G networking topology. So I think that there's something that's being missed there. Okay, I would like to see the actual operators, satellite operators and manufacturers and the equipment vendors come out with a SATCOM 3GPP interworking function that could migrate into a 5G core much more effectively than we have today. Because today you have multiple vendors such as ourselves, SpaceBridge. We're doing it on our own, and we don't even know if it's going to be interoperable with somebody else. It's like, you know, it's an effort on our side for innovation. But the point being is that if there was an industry-wide way of doing this, it would be beneficial to our industry.
Well, thank you for the lead into the next question then, which is all about... Alex, go ahead, please.
The largest conundrum for the regulators. Again, satellite terrestrial started back in 2007 at the WRC, where the IMT was introduced in the C-band. At this time, sharing was pretty much straightforward. It was band segmentation. You slice this up, one portion to terrestrial, one portion to satellite, no problem, that's it. Second option was exclusion zone. So you've got a gateway around this, no IMT, anywhere else, IMT is fine. Now things have changed. Within a 3GPP, release 17, there was the first edition where the satellite was mentioned in the standard. Yeah. And now both worlds, they want to not only communicate to each other, but there's a convergence between the satellite and the terrestrial networks. And so regulators now face the challenge to allow simultaneous operations of both the satellite and the terrestrial from technical standpoint, how they will share, from as well, I would say, more financial market perspective, because they have to satisfy as well the public interest, the regulators, but as well to recognize the use of the sovereign asset, the spectrum, and monetize this. So how they will monetize the spectrum for direct-to-device without, I would say, hindering the deployment of this direct-to-device. So many different challenges they have to work on. We've seen a few initiatives in the US with the STS framework, which see many others, but I think, some big challenge ahead for the regulators, but very exciting time.
Very true. So, taking your lead into the next question. Previously, everything's been proprietary. If a customer buys equipment from one operator, they're basically stuck with them, because if you want to change, you've got to throw out the entire ground equipment and start again. Now we're totally talking about integration, common standards, so that everything becomes interoperable. So how is this impacting your business, and how are you changing what you're doing? When you've got organizations like Diffie, how important are they, and are they helping or hindering moving this thing go forward? And most importantly, do we have any regulatory hurdles to this type of integration and common standards? Okay, who wants to jump in?
I'll start. As I said earlier, in terms of the shift of the level of effort required in the business and where the attention is being focused, I think Diffie, we're both, but from an organisational standpoint, very heavily involved in Diffie, and our engineering director is actually chairing one of the working groups in terms of the standards committee. So we've sort of heavily been involved in that standardization approach. It's still got a way to go in terms of the level of genuine interoperability. We recently hosted an event actually at Harwell in the UK for a Plugfest event to bring together vendors and actually test whether the standards are coming to fruition, whether you can genuinely plug equipment in and operate an end-to-end SATCOM solution with different vendors' equipment. And actually, the net result of that was pretty positive, actually, in terms of the interoperability. It still highlights a number of gaps, but as an organization, I think what it's really sort of showing, and this is very much in that virtual and sort of digital environment, is how do you provide a flexible platform with which to operate and to offer the end user, to Mark's point, the end user wants the end result. They're not fussed about how they get it. It's more about offering a flexible platform with which to provide those necessary services. So I think what it's done for us is very much focused the attention on how do you keep your platforms as open as possible and have them configurable to various standards. Whether Diffie is one, but there's nothing to say that in discrete requirements that a proprietary solution would not be required. And I think it's kind of keeping an open mind as to how to approach solving those customer problems.
Okay.
Yeah, we made a decision about 4 years ago to, one of the proprietary pieces in SATCOM is an FPGA, right? The core of a lot of the modems are either ASICs or FPGAs. The core of all the hubs are FPGAs. So very, very long development times, very turn cycles on improvements are long on those. And you're tied to an architecture, you're tied to this physical FPGA, and they're different, right? I'm not a hardware guy, right? So, big deal. No, FPGAs, this FPGA and code and this FPGA code don't work together. So what Kratos did is we said, let's look at how the whole digital transformation in the telco market's happening. And that's really focused on CPU. So we made the strategic decision to to go to a CPU-based SATCOM system. Now, for us, it wasn't too hard because we had already created CPU-based software modems for TT&C and NEO, so we just had to create a transmitter and then start to create a full system around that. We did reorganize our whole entire company around this new way of doing development, right? We moved to a web development, or excuse me, to a modern cloud-native, cloud-first development environment, and created a system that runs purely on CPUs. 2 weeks ago, we did a demonstration for a customer. The big thing that's always been, everybody says, can't do it in CPUs, can't get speeds in CPUs, gotta have FPGAs. All right, well, 2 weeks ago, we showed 3 gigabits per second in CPU on a single server. So I don't know, not that many people need 3 gigabits per second, and we can do it in CPU. So I think the industry is going to have to respond to that, and there are people getting together to figure out, do we need to have a common FPGA that everybody works towards? Or do we say, hey, you know what? Some things in SATCOM could benefit from FPGA, so let's just put that into FPGA, put everything else in CPU. So I think these are the things that are going to improve interoperability between vendors as the whole industry goes through the digital transformation and sorts out proprietary hardware.
I take the opposite angle. No, I respect everything you're saying. And I agree with everything you're saying. But at the same time, I think that for hyperscalability, you do need a FPGA or ASICs or whatever. It's like, for example, when you're talking about a VHTS type topology, you need to support 11 gigahertz on forward capacity and 3 gigahertz on return capacity. And in order to provide that, I can't, and I don't know very much about how Kratos scales, but I can't imagine how you would do that in a compute resource. If you design it around an FPGA, it becomes hyperscalable, hardware dependent. So I think there's room for both. There will always be room for both. There'll be a hardware-based approach for hyperscalability, software-based approach for flexibility. Okay, but at the same time, I worry about a compute-based approach. I don't know about you guys, but I have to change laptop every couple of years, and I don't see the software getting more complex, or less complex. I just see that basically my CPUs either slow down, it's overloaded, or whatever. But I don't see that as an approach for the hyperscalable large network deployments. One of the other things I'd like to mention is that you say that, you're burdened with hardware at the end that is not reusable. Sorry, when those original systems are basically being deployed, they're being deployed with a business case, okay? And they successfully achieve and provide that business case while they're deployed. At the end, after 5, 6, 10 years, you have a bunch of hardware that you're not using anymore. It's already met its business case. So I don't understand why people are so concerned with reusing it or not being able to scale it to something else. It's a non-argument as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Boom, boom, boom.
So there has been a lot of discussion in the industry that CPUs can't scale, but hyperscalers came from CPUs, yeah. Right? We just responded to a customer who has very, very large networks, very large multi-gigabit solutions, and we were able to match FPGA with CPU on scalability for their environment. So I'm not concerned about that. That's definitely there. The other thing that we noticed is, so we came out with our first system about 3 years ago, and they were Gen 3 CPUs. Mm-hmm. There are Gen 5 CPUs out now, and we got about a 30% increase in performance and scalability just because the underlying hardware changed. When you go to a digital transformation, IT department wants to see everything on their servers. Perfect. Their servers aren't like your laptop. Every 2 to 3 years, get a new one. You get a new server every 5 years. That's typically the life cycle. So every 5 years, you do nothing and your SATCOM performance goes up. You just put in a new servers, goes up.
But you're always putting in new servers.
Yes, but you're not stuck with a proprietary.
If it meets a business case.
Okay, you two can duke that one out later.
We'll deal with this.
I was given the 10-minute warning at least 5 minutes ago. So quickly, any questions? Yes. Okay, here in the front.
Heard actually something amazing from R. There's a one way for that's partly successful because they're very different is because he need for us. Imagine Amazon Hyper comes to the markets and you will have the satellite chain clothing on how easy is that? And we are not is about create a small system. The strategic decision, how we can get there. And you were arguing about this 5G, of course. 5G, the control, I'm not speaking about 317. I'm talking about the 18, which is NTM. So on 18, I agree that it is written by somewhere else plus because they are bigger than us, simply, as overcomplicated. But if you want to do something, if you want to compete, the easiness and accessibility of Starlink and Kuiper, I want to provide something to the customer. And we don't follow side, which, first of all, if 5G network control layer can help, and it really does not help, what is the alternative? What is the alternative?
Oh, to 5G?
Yeah, to do something that we, as a ground segment provider, can meet and giving a solution to the customer as easy as.
So we can leave 5G out of the whole discussion on the user experience that Starlink and Kuiper bring to the table, right? There are OSS BSS systems you can buy today. They can integrate in with they can integrate in with your entire system, right, including your SATCOM systems. A lot of the existing baseband systems only integrate in with one or two of these OSS BSSs. So from an industry in general, adopting the TM Forum API standards so that you interoperate with any OSS BSS system, right? So you can walk into a Verizon and say, I don't care what OSS BSS system you have, you can create services over my SATCOM platform. So that's one challenge right there, right? Getting the order done, then you have to fully orchestrate and automate your SATCOM system so that when that OSS BSS sends a signal in, the SATCOM system says, oh, I know what kind of service that customer is asking for. It's instantly available, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. No operators involved, nobody typing in the keyboard, nobody pre-configuring that end user, right? Then there's the bigger challenge, I think, right now is you ship out what to the end customer, right? That's where Starlink has a huge advantage in the market, right? They've got a phased array antenna this big, low cost, and they can ship that out. That's for the geo market. That's the biggest challenge I think we have that we need to solve is where's that simple antenna that's lower cost that we can ship to the customer so that this whole digital transformation could be realized. So we can do all the rest of it, but if we don't do that last piece, we're not going to make it.
Okay, we're definitely at time, but I'm going to give you just one question that I want a one-sentence answer to. As things continue to evolve, what do you need to do to stay ahead of the pack, to make yourselves relevant in the future? I know that's mean, giving you only one sentence to answer that, but...
Consolidation, industry consolidation, and close partnerships.
I would say keep working with the regulators. We see different things about multi-orbit orchestration, but there's no such licensing product off the shelf, geo, non-geo. There's still a lot of work to do with the regulators to allow this, I would say, seamless transition from geo to non-geo.
I would say in terms of partnership and collaboration in terms of industry focus, I don't think that any one organisation at the moment is in a position where they can do everything. So to keep up with pace of change. It takes a long time to develop technology from scratch.
Yeah, I agree. Co-opetition, right there. We just signed a collaboration agreement with a SATCOM vendor who we compete with sometimes, and sometimes we partner with. And so it's, co-opetition.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your contributions, time.